session. I actually remembered. And so let's get rolling here. The task was to build the Old West scenario. Max, I'm sorry, yours came rolling in. I don't have time to. Well, let's see what you've got here. No, I don't have time to read all of this. But let me at least get an idea of what you came up with for the Barroom Brawl story world. Let's see. What was the order in which you tackled? You had various tasks. Which actors are going to be active? What the personality model will be, and what verbs you'll choose. Here we go. 1680 by 1015. First question, in what order do you handle these tasks? Okay, Max started with characters. Anybody else have a different order? Let's see, characters, verbs, traits, characters, personality model, verbs. Okay, and then sort of a convergent approach. Started with characters. Okay. You all get an F. Because Crawford's first law of software design is always ask, what does the user, wait a minute, I'm terribly sorry, I screwed this up. Did it in the wrong order. Where is that? Okay, once again, Crawford's first law of software design is what does the user do? The kazoo is a necessary part of the definition of the law. What does the user do? What are the verbs? You first define the verbs. What do you, very good. Together now, ready? 1, 2, 3. Anyway, let's see. First, you define the verbs. You want to ask, what kind of things do I want happening here? This is a barroom brawl. Okay, fine. We're going to have people throwing chairs at each other. We're going to have people breaking bottles over each other's heads. We're going to have people pulling out guns. Bang, 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 bang. We're going to have people giving, really tough insults. You low-down scumbag of a Rottweiler, you whatever. We're going to have people throwing up tables, and this is what happens in a barroom brawl. So you want these things to happen. Of course, you also have to have the things that get you up to there. But here, let me respond. I was thinking verbs with 4 characters at the beginning. Okay. So it's not what the user does, but what the user and the characters should be able to do the same thing. I mean, here you are in a bar room. It's not like, the player is, can't do anything that other characters can do. They're all human beings. They're all cowboys. They've all, got guns and so forth. They should be able to do the same thing. Max, you have a question?
I just wanted to say that even if I didn't begin with the verbs, I think I had the verbs in mind. That's why I didn't begin with them. Like I knew, because of the setup, like the story, I knew that it was going to be a fight and insult and stuff. So maybe that's why I didn't begin with that. I don't know if it's the same for others, but that's why I think.
Let's see. Yeah, this is a fundamental difference between games and story worlds. In games, the non-player characters have all sorts of capabilities that the player doesn't have, and vice versa. Well, in interactive storytelling, everybody's a person. And unless you're, different species or robots or something like that, you all have the same capabilities. So you just start off with the assumption everybody can do the same thing. That's your default position. And yes, if you need an asymmetry, you can do it. But in general, I think asymmetries in verb access are, they make matters unnecessarily complex. Yes, you can do it. I'm the sheriff. I can take you to jail. Nobody else can. But for the most part, they really should have pretty much the same verbs available. Well, let's see. Leandro says the subset we choose directs the verbs that can be plausibly used. Well, again, most of with the exception of the prostitute, they're all cowboys. They're all basically the same. But I suppose even the prostitute could pull out a gun. So,
yeah, but for example, the barkeep has interest in his business, so he doesn't want the saloon destroyed or things like that.
Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry. Barry has been waiting to come in. Let me apologize. Let's see. Sorry, Barry. I was so busy explaining something I didn't notice the little tiny thing on the bottom that says, "Oh, Barry wants in." Let's see. Hi. Oh, Barry, I need to get the screen size of your computer in pixels. If you can look that up and just put it in the chat, because I'll be handing out the encounter editor next week. And I'm going to be making some changes. Yeah, the pixels, is, 2560 by 1440, that kind of thing. Let's see. By the way, does Story Worlds have an HP trait? What is an HP trait, Max? Oh, here we go. Oh, health. You can put it in if you want, but that's actually my very first reaction is you're thinking games, not drama. I mean, go ahead, Max.
Yeah, no, I didn't put them, but I thought maybe like a weak, strong trait, because if they engage in a fight, then you want to know who wins. So
yes,
that's what I did.
If there's going to be a fist fight, yes, you want to have something about how strong they are in a fist fight. Let's see, 19. Oh, wow, 1440 by 25. Oh, that's revert. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So now let's talk about the personality models. What kind of personality traits did you guys come up with? Well, first, let me ask a simple question. Hold up your fingers. How many personality traits did you have in your personality model? 4, 5, 3, 3, 3, 3. Very good. Very good. Because there is such a strong temptation to throw in all sorts of personality traits, and it's really hard to keep that list down to something short. So you guys want to rattle off your, oh, well, wait, let me catch up here. Bad, good, personality trait is important. Yeah, bad, good is almost always the most important personality trait. You know, think of it as nice, nasty, especially because the perceived value of bad, good, P bad, good, it very nicely fits into the idea of affection or like. You know, if you have a high P bad good, then you like the other person. Bad good is all. In fact, I'll say it's the only personality trait that I regard as universally applicable. Lawless, lawful. Yeah. Appropriate. Again, I have an immediate gut level reaction that says, games, warning, danger. Because, and it actually, in this case, I think it does fit. But in general, be really careful about taking an idea over from the games world and moving it into the interactive storytelling world. Usually that can often trip you up. Anyway, let's see. Boy, you guys are really timid, dominant. Yes, it's still relevant. I think in this case, timid, dominant is a good one. Peaceful, violent. That is not quite orthogonal to bad, good, though. That is a good person going to be violent? Is a bad person, or could a bad person be peaceful? Yeah, but it's not that likely. And could a good person be violent? Well, again, so they're not parallel. They're sort of like this, where in orthogonality they're like this. You increase the bad good, and you have no effect on peaceful violent. But they're like this. More bad good means more peaceful. So, oh, a little tiny thing I've always followed, sort of a protocol. For any personality attribute, I put the nasty, bad, evil one first because it takes a negative value, and the good, virtuous, nice value second. So bad, good, false, honest, violent, peaceful, so forth. Just a little tiny protocol, because that helps when you're putting together the algorithms. It makes it a little easier to think about what you're doing. Let's see. Oh, okay, there. Yeah, bad, good, weak, strong, orthodox, unorthodox. This is in terms of fighting style, or how likely or unlikely someone is to use tricks instead of brute force. In this scenario, it felt wrong to use bad, good. Only bad people use dirty tricks because the power balance is skewed from the start. So it is fine if good Willie uses trick. Good point, good point. Bad, good, timid. And one more, dumb, smart. I thought of Barroom Brawl in Back to the Future 3, and this trait came to my mind. Yeah, that in some ways, dumb, smart is a little parallel to orthodox, unorthodox. That is, the smart guy will be more likely to use an unorthodox method, but you know, these are, you can see there's this huge range of ideas about what constitutes good personality traits. So, oh, here we go. Bad, good, weak, strong, faithless, honest, submissive, dominant. Yep, very good. Okay, so those were the personality traits. Let's talk about the verbs. First, again, how many verbs Well, would you guys like to just type in your verb lists if they aren't too long? Or just if they're long, just tell me how many, or write down how many verbs there are on your verb list. Let's see. Wow. Leandro. Okay, so you organized them by groups. Escalating degrees of violence, insult, humiliatingly kick in the butt, punch, throw over this. Yeah, throw over the bar, that's a good one. Hit with chair, draw gun, shoot and miss, shoot and hit. Ah, that raises an interesting problem. Let me just talk about that verb. Shoot and miss and shoot and hit. Is that two verbs? Or, I mean, should it be shoot and miss, shoot and hit, or should it be shoot, hit, or miss?
Yeah, I was thinking about the dramatic implications. So I think it's really two things, dramatically speaking.
It turns out that is a perennial problem. There are all sorts of things where a character will attempt something and then succeed or fail. I never came up with a general solution to the problem. I mean, yes, grouping them together, punch and miss, or swing and miss. You know, there are a million variations on this, and the rough rule of thumb I used was that if an intervening factor could interfere with the final result, then you break it up into shoot and hit or miss. But if it's just, you know, when you pull the trigger, you're either going to hit or miss, and it's not like somebody can stop you, then it's shoot and hit or shoot and miss. So, but again, I ran into some weird ones, especially when there's a time delay between the attempt and the result. Poison, for example. You know, I put poison in the guy's drink. Well, he may not drink it. So then you say, poison the drink and he's poisoned. Separate verbs. Let's see. Watch your language. This is a respectable place. Watch your language. We have a lady in the room. Lady? What lady? Let's see. Verbs to allow supporting actors to act or less violently. Call attention to distract. Declare that that would help someone in case of a fight. Oh, I see. If this gets rough, I'm on Little Willie's side. Say we'll call the sheriff. Throw face powder in the eyes. Shout, look, the sheriff is behind you. Yeah. Or did you guys watch the gunfighter thing on YouTube?
A bear.
There's a bear. There's a bear behind you. Pour bottles to make the floor slippery. Say, think fast and throw a mouse trap. 15 verbs, 30 verbs, shoot, cuss, run, punch, joke, beg. Ask for help, beg for mercy. Cluck. Cluck? I gotta hear that. What's cluck?
I mean, for instance, in Back to the Future, when Marty McFly, people tell him that he's a chicken.
Oh, okay.
And they start,
yes.
You know,
yeah.
like a chicken.
Yeah. Okay.
In Spanish, it's cluck, what the chickens say.
Well, yeah. Cry, duck, escalate, fight, evade, grab, ignore, pacify, punch, run away, shout, spit. Okay. The general comment I have. Oh, go ahead, Barry.
I don't know if you saw it. My list is at the top. It's pretty short. I have no idea.
Yeah. Attack, taunt, help, lay low, leave. Okay, good. in general, I will warn you, a long list of verbs is a lot of work. Basically, the amount of work you put into a story world is directly proportional to the number of verbs. Another way of putting it is that at least 90% of the time you spend working on a story world is spent working on the verbs. So twice as many verbs means twice as much work. Is bleed a verb in a story world, like a character gets punched and start to bleed? No, that is, well, you could make it a verb, but only if it is itself consequential. That is, if one character bleeding would cause another character to say, oh my God, he's bleeding, we've got to do something different. Then it's a verb. If it's a physical consequence, I do have a system in the Storytron technology where there are physical consequences to verbs. The most obvious of this is transfer of possession. I give Jim my book. There's a physical consequence. Possession of the book is transferred from me to Jim. So if bleeding were a, if there were a physical factor here, blood loss or something, then bleeding would be a physical consequence. You say blood loss plus equals 10 or something like that. Yes, so if bleeding could initiate behavior in another character, then yes, then it can be appropriate as a verb. Although I wonder, no, I just leave it that way. So let's see. So your verb count is going to equal your hours of labor. Hours of labor is proportional to verb count. Let's see. I learned something, I realized something the other day while trying to explain something to the other group. And that was that I've been doing you a disservice by teaching you about the Storytron technology. Now, the Storytron, that's what we've been talking about all this time, the concepts of the Storytron technology. And yes, that technology is far and away the most advanced technology that I'm aware of. I've looked at a lot of stuff. I still get to see a lot of the papers that are submitted to the annual conferences and so forth. And by the way, I will mention, it really is depressing reading these papers. Every year there's an annual conference called ICIVs, and this is where the academics doing the research publish their papers about all the wonderful new ideas they get, and the problem is none of them are new. Basically what happens is academics plunge into it and say, I'm going to do some interactive storytelling stuff, and they work on it for a while and they realize, God damn, this is hard, and they move on to something else. Let's see. So anyway, and then a new academic comes in, some young kid comes in and wants to publish some papers, and the new person does a lot of the same stuff that somebody did 10 years ago or whatever. So we're not getting a lot of progress because this is such a difficult problem. And so, yeah, the SWAT technology is the best there is, but it's not good enough. Barry asks, have you ever created a playable story world? One that could try out. I've created a number of, God, I've created about half a dozen story worlds. All of them were crap. Now, it may be that I'm simply too much of a perfectionist. The Seaboot story world really went a long ways. It was pretty damn good, and there was a lot of good stuff in it. But it just had too mechanical a feel to it. I felt that it was, that if I presented it to the world, people would look at it and they would think, boy, interactive storytelling sucks. We've got a bit of a problem here in terms of introducing this technology to the world, because it is new and different and weird, and it stands in contrast to games. And basically, people will play games and say, wow, this is really neat. And then they're going to look at a story world, which is, you know, is at the same level of development as games were in about 1976. And they're going to say, huh, this is junk. Here's a better analogy, I suppose. Imagine Wilbur and Orville Wright were delayed by, 120 years, okay? And so here we are in 2020, and we're driving these, you know, all these great, wonderful cars. And then these two guys come up with this silly biplane that can fly about 100 yards. And they say, we can fly. And everybody says, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. And that's the situation we face with interactive storytelling. We're still in the Wilbur and Orville Wright, the Wright brothers stage. And so the stuff I've made is about as impressive as their airplane. And compared to games, it looks like crap. I look at it and say, this flies. This really does fly. And so I think it's very important, but I realize most people will look at this and be disappointed. So we've got to get something better. Our threshold of quality is much higher than games had when they were getting started in the 70s. So anyway, yeah, as Barry points out, they're going to compare it to Call of Duty when they should be comparing it to Pac-Man. So, yep, that's our problem. So I've allowed some people to look at the story worlds I've got. Maybe let me look into seeing whether Seaboot is even working right now. And if it's presentable, I'll make it available to you guys in all its horrible flaws. So anyway, but the thing is, I don't want to be pushing the SWAT technology down your throat, just as I warn you against letting the games mentality dominate your thinking about interactive storytelling. I don't want the SWAT mentality dominate your thinking. Yes, the SWAT mentality is a hell of a lot better or more appropriate, and there are an awful lot of great ideas in it, and I hope you steal many of those ideas. But ultimately, I think it's better if people start off on their own and create their own. The other big reason is that the SWAT technology is just too goddamn complicated. In order to master it, you will need to spend an enormous amount of time messing around with it. And it's just too, I mean, this is a major development environment. This is like, you know, the first time you learned how to program, you know, this is that hairy. So I'll see if I can make SWAT available to you. I think I have a presentable version of it. and you can at least look at it and click on a few things and say, wow, shit, and at least get an idea, you know, sort of like, I'll let you go into the cockpit of the 747 and push some of the buttons, but we won't have any fuel in the engines, so you can't crash. So anyway, instead, what I'm going to do is show you the encounter editor, and I am going to encourage you to work with that. That's why I needed your screen sizes, because over the next week, I will recode it to make it a little easier to use, to make it more generic in style, and to, I've got to write up some very simple documentation. And geez, I wish I'd had it ready today so I could give you an introduction to it. However, there is a, come on thing, here. There is a video on it. Oh no, that's just these things. There are actually 3 videos. No, I don't want to see that. Have you guys already seen those? Here we go. Here is the first video. They're all on YouTube. There are 3 of them. The first, good Lord, the first one is half an hour long. Jeez. The first one is really more of a why, you know, why you need to think these ways. And it goes over some of the material we've already discussed. It does show a bit about the, wow, that's an old version. It does show a bit of the SWAT technology, but it also has the encounter editor. And then it includes the URLs to lecture number 2, which is 18 minutes long, and lecture number 3, which is also 18 minutes long. So your homework assignment for next week is to watch those, and I will have the encounter editor ready for you at that time. In the meantime, we also have, we can at least talk about the, where are we? There. The 3 lessons that were going to be handled. I might as well run through those. Yes, gossip, development systems, and faces. I'll just open up the floor on all 3 of those. Anybody want to? Oh, I didn't send the URL. Come on, Chris. No. Come on, Chris. Do. I'm stuck in something. Come on, cat, get out of the way. There we go. Okay, there's the URL. Anyway, so let's open up the floor to discussions of the 3 things: gossip, development environments, and faces. Anybody have anything to say about, very briefly, the gossip systems are simply ways of making people aware of events that they did not witness. And the frightening thing about that is that if you've got 1,000 events taking place and then you've got all these people talking about them. It can be quite a pain in the butt to keep track of everything. I came up with a much simplified system that takes a lot less memory and a lot fewer cycles to process. And it's a handy dandy little system. It also prioritizes the order in which things are reported. The critical factor that makes that work is the concept of verb import. One of the attributes of every verb is its import. That is how dramatically significant it is. In other words, lick the stamp has an import of, minus 0.9, and murder your lover has an import of plus 0.99. So, oh, not a question, but could you elaborate more on why you didn't find the rehearsal feature much useful? I found basically the rehearsal feature was a better way to do it was with Log Lizard. That is, the rehearsal feature just automatically goes out and plays all sorts of variations on the games. And the problem is that the display of what happens is just too clumsy. It's too complicated keeping track of all, the tree of results and how many of each one came out. So it was just not very practical. You had to spend a lot of time stepping through the tree, figuring out what was going on, and that wasn't that useful. Much more useful was Log Lizard, which is one of the most brilliant feats of coding I've ever seen. I didn't do it. It was done by, damn it, I can't even, Facundo Dominguez in Uruguay. And it was just absolutely brilliant the way he could store enormous quantities of data algorithmically. He had little pinpoint. It's like, do you know what tweening is in cartooning? The idea is that instead of doing every single frame, the animator draws critical key points in the motion, and then the drudge comes along and draws the intermediate frames. Well, he did something similar where he saved only critical points in the development of the story world, and then he had algorithms that recreated what happened in between. Very nicely done. I mean, just brilliant code. If you can ever reproduce that, you're really good. I've looked through the code and I don't get it. It's big code. Anyway, I found that was much more useful because I could simply start off, play a story world for a while, and then stop and go back and wait a minute, why did that happen? And I could go back through Log Lizard and find out everything that happened. I mean, imagine building a game where, you shoot at a monster and miss, and you say, why did I miss? And you can go back and see every step of the calculation, every number in every step of the calculation, and see exactly why it happened. That's how useful Log Lizard is. Brilliant concept. Anyway, what was I talking about? So gossip, and then development environments. I'll simply say that there are gobs and gobs of these. Oh God, does anybody remember Mr. Clippy? Are you all too young to remember? Okay. Mr. Clippy,
I remember him.
One of the great disasters in software design. Oh, good. I do have something showing how Log Lizard worked. So rehearsal lizard. Yeah, here are various lizards. Anyway, the key point though is that a development environment for interactive storytelling will need all sorts of intermediate level debugging tools, lots of things that make it easy to zero in on what's going on, much more so than in the case of regular programming languages. Most programming languages have very limited assistance, you know, breakpoints, debuggers. Yeah, that's okay, but well, actually, if you talk about if you consider some of the really advanced scriptable breakpoints, where you can say, trigger this breakpoint on the 31st event if this flag is set, that type of scripting, that's what you would need for interactive storytelling, because it's just so complicated. The thread killer detector, yes, that was a very useful feature in the development environment. Could you replace it with a dog or wizard? I don't get the reference. Replace what, Leandro?
The clip.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mr.
it's in the
Clippy,
comments.
yeah. Yeah. By the way, the reason my stuff are called, I think I mentioned this, the reason I call them lizards is that back around 20 years ago, the big user interface idea was wizards who would do things for you. And you could, you know, call up this wizard and he would automatically do something for you. And the thing is, wizards were really stupid. They really didn't do very much at all. And but they were sometimes useful assistants. And so I called mine lizards. And in fact, in an early version of the technology, I had cute little pictures of lizards for each one. So, but I'm sure we all disabled that assistant. Yeah, as soon as you know how to do it, you disable it. The real test of the lizards in the Storytron technology, I used them all. When working on this stuff, I found every one of them at some point useful. So that at least demonstrates that they were, that the concept was pretty good. Lastly, the stuff on faces. I want to emphasize just how contemptuous I am of face technology in games these days. It is totally, completely wrong, stupid, idiotic. I hate it, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because they're going for photorealism. You know, the games people are big on realism. And this is drama, not the real world. In the real world, people spend a lot of time sitting on a toilet. That's not fun. And so this whole emphasis, this philosophy of realism is got carried over into faces in a way that is destructive. The best thing I have, do you recall that image I had of, what's it, Calvin, the cartoon character Calvin with all his extreme faces? That's what we need. The other example I use, in fact, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my thing on faces. 19 years ago, we had the perfect object lesson in the right way to do faces, because two movies came out in the summer, I think it was 2001. One was the very first Shrek movie, and the second was the Final Fantasy movie. Now, Final Fantasy, if you're particularly young, was a very popular game all through the 90s. It was so popular, so successful, that the creator of that somehow talked a bunch of idiots into giving him money to make a movie based on it. And movies based on games are always bad ideas. And he got a lot of money, and this was like 2001, face technology wasn't that good. He got a lot of computer power to generate all these facial things, and he got the most accurate faces that had ever been done in a movie. In fact, they boasted that on the head of the protagonist was a woman, and they boasted that she had 30,000 independent hairs on her head. They were so proud of having 30,000 hairs in their facial database for that character. And they had all these great, beautiful, realistic images. Meanwhile, Shrek didn't have any hair on his head, and the Shrek face was, not at all realistic. And yet, Shrek outsold Final Fantasy 10-1. And there were lots of sequels to Shrek, and Shrek toys, and Shrek coffee cups, and all sorts of Shrek stuff. And Final Fantasy, the movie, got nowhere. So the moral of this story is you don't want realistic faces, you want artistic faces. And if you're going to do it, the best people in the world for this are cartoonists. Study the human face as done by cartoonists. They know the human face inside and out. They know every fine detail. Spend a lot of time looking at cartoon faces, especially, or for that matter, spend a lot of time watching the movies from Industrial Light and Magic, Pixar. All of those. I adore the faces, and I will stop. I'll be watching one of those movies and I'll freeze it and then go back a few frames just to look very closely at that face. They do so many good things with faces in those, especially the what I call dynamic expressions. That is, there's a smile expression and a frown expression. But what's really neat is the transition from what? Oh, it's the transitions between facial expressions. That takes real talent to do that well. So anyway, you've got to have faces. Interactive storytelling without faces is just wrong, stupid, bad idea. And they have to be cartoon faces. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. And in the facial expression of the characters are meaningless. We could get the face of Ellie from Last of Us and do the Kuleshov effect, where the different, now he's sad. No, now he's happy. Yes, let me explain that story to everybody. I'll get it wrong, so correct me where I make mistakes, Ivan. This Russian guy took a photograph of an actor just looking very hard and serious. And then did he prompt the people with suggested expressions, or did he just ask them what they saw? I think he prompted them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he said, here is an actor showing a very subtle, he's very angry but restrained. And they'd say, oh yeah, that's good. And then he'd say, here's an actor who is sexually aroused and he's getting ready. And they say, wow, that's subtle, that's good. And he went through all the emotions and everybody said, yeah. But the point of it was, he wasn't really saying anything. It's just being a blank expression. Let's see. This is a small portion of the animations behind the recently released video game Rocky. Okay, can you give us a quick verbal summary, Donalo?
Yeah, so I just saw this come by my Twitter timeline, but it does what you're saying, lean into the cartoonist art style to have very clear to read emotions, because just to repeat what you just said, the quarter shell effect, you don't want people to have to try and guess what emotion is being depicted. And I think that this game does a really good job at that.
Good, good. Well, there's certainly enormous capacity for improvement here. I've kept an eye out. I have seen there are a few cartoon editor systems that allow you to do cartoons, but they're more comic book creation tools than facial editors. 20, no more than that. I built my first facial display system back in '91. And God, it's been 30 years now. And in fact, that's pretty much what is shown. I show it, the sort of reddish orange faces. That's from the 91 technology. And that is still better than some of the stuff we're seeing in games now. That's awful. We could do so much better than that crap. And I really wish somebody would do it, make a really good 3D facial editor that permits cartoon faces. For example, one thing, eyebrows have got to be able to go above the head. Because in cartoons, sometimes a character is so surprised he goes, whoa, and his eyebrows go way up here. I mean, that's the way it works. But the thing I couldn't do was rotation and tilting, or forward tilting. And that's really important. So let's see, I think it is helpful to study manga and how they handle facial expressions in a much more expressing way than most comics. Oh yeah, deformed and exaggerated faces, that's what comics are about. Let me explain a simple point about this. The concept of caricature actually has an arithmetic manifestation. Caricature, when we talk about caricature of faces, it simply takes the existing face and exaggerates its whatever it has out of normal. For example, if you have a very common thing in caricature, if you have a person with ears that are slightly larger than the average ear, when you caricature the face, you make the ears much bigger. If a person has slightly bushier eyebrows, in the caricature, you make them really bushy. Basically, you exaggerate every deviation from average. You don't just exaggerate everything, you exaggerate the deviations. Well, the arithmetic role of that is simple. You simply take this face and you compare it with the average, and you say, on a feature by feature basis, you say, this is 10% bigger than the average, so I'm going to make it 20% bigger. And it's just arithmetic. I mean, that's how simple it is. And that's how you can get eyebrows getting above the head. In the emotional expression, the eyebrow goes up 20%, well, I'll have it go up 80%. So that's how you do that trick. And it's really easy to do. That's how I did it 30 years ago. even if moving to 3D, we could always apply a tune shading after that to turn it to 2D, pseudo 2D. Yeah. So anyway, any last questions, suggestions, comments, whatever on any of this stuff? Oh, wait. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, this may have been the best lesson, but it was certainly the least organized. Normally, I really do have an outline, and today maybe I should throw away outlines. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be, the initial concept for this course was you read the lessons, then we talk about them. And this time I realized 2 weeks ago, you've got to be doing stuff, not just talking about it. So I thought that the verbal interaction would be very useful. It is, but I think having you do stuff is much more valuable. So I am making that transition right now. This week I will be spending a lot of time recoding the encounter editor, and we'll start getting you guys doing some stuff. Right now, I don't know how much longer this course will last. We'll just take it as we, as we can. We'll see. I think working on exercises, be able to try stuff. Yes. Yes, so we'll just see. Okay, I will see you guys next week, and I'll have some code for you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay,
guys.
bye-bye.
Bye.